It's summer 2009, school's out, and the homies are over for an inordinate amount of time. Playing Battlefront 2 on PS2, Heroes vs. Villains mode on Mos Eisley. Jedi Rocks comes on while destroying Leia with Anakin Skywalker. Life is good.
All right, and welcome back to the Sense of Life podcast. I'm Joe, that's Cody, and today we're going to be talking about Star Wars Battlefront 2, the 2005 one, not the 2019. I think it might actually be 2018. I'm not sure, or even
I think it
17.
was.
Uh, the
I think
newer
it was 17,
Battlefront.
actually. I think
Yeah,
it was 17 because the first one was 15, I
yeah.
think.
Time means nothing anymore after COVID-19. I can't remember fucking anything.
Yeah.
Uh,
I whole 2 years is just lost, and a void happened, and um,
we're here
we
now.
got, yeah.
But yeah, no,
That'll be
it's
another topic.
yeah. Um, so this is going to be about Star Wars Battlefront 2 for the original Xbox, PlayStation 2. Was it on the GameCube?
I don't think it was. I don't think it was on GameCube.
It had
Well, maybe.
it had a PSP equivalent as well.
Oh yeah, Elite Squadron, I think, was the PSP Battlefront.
I think so. Yeah.
That
Uh,
was a cool game. That was a cool game.
yeah.
Did you ever play
Unfortunately,
that?
no. Unfortunately, that was a game that I really wanted when I was a kid, but I never got that one.
Oh man, it had I can't remember much about it, but it had a really cool campaign that um it was what did you played as this clone trooper, and the clone trooper turned out to be like force sensitive,
Okay.
and then there was another clone, and like you follow the clone trooper kind of in this like Captain Rex modern Star Wars thing through to like the end of the galactic civil war,
Hmm.
and he meets up with his brother, another clone that is a Sith. It's like fucking like expanded universe, like weird shit, but it was really cool.
That actually does sound pretty interesting.
Yeah, and it had like the heroes versus villains thing, but
Okay.
you could do it on multiple planets and not just Mos Eisley, like in Battlefront 2.
Right. Right. Um,
Yeah, it was a cool game.
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
We're kind of using the original Battlefront 2 as kind of a jumping off point to talk about. I mean, more specifically, kind of a general idea of the couch co-op era of games in general, like around that time.
Yeah,
Because we
basically when we were kids.
yeah, we were both children during the early
Yeah,
2000s, so it was
yeah, I was 8 when this game came out because it came out the same year as Revenge of the Sith.
yeah, I was 7 then, so yeah.
Yeah,
Point
and we
being,
we did not know each other,
no,
so
no, no. The kind of point of this is just kind of reminiscing about how good things used to be and how horrible things are now, and shaking our fists at the sky and at these damn kids today and all that sort of all that jazz, you know.
just old man yells at clouds about fucking video games. That's what we're doing today.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some like
Um,
mid 90s like boomer shooter kid that's watching this right now who's like, you have no fucking idea. You're the damn kids. But
yeah, it's. I mean, it's like I don't know about you, but I remember growing up at like the very tail end of the kind of fuck, what were they called? Video stores.
oh yeah,
Um,
oh yeah, definitely.
like we had I remember going occasionally to Blockbuster, but usually for me it was like Family Video and Hollywood Video.
Mm.
And they would actually have like a game rental section. This is before I was like big into movies. I would watch movies when I was a kid, but I wasn't really a cinephile or anything.
Right.
And they had this like it was like an oval room of games, and that was always really cool to go into. You'd rent them for like 3 to 5 days or something, or like 5 to 7 days. It was a treat.
Yeah, I mean, as far as renting video games back in the day, I did that as well at Blockbuster video store. They had, I specifically remember I remember I really wanted the SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom video game for the
Hell
PlayStation
yeah.
2. Because I rented it there one time and played it for like the entire week or whatever it was that I rented it for. And
Yeah.
I remember going to all the GameStops, well, all two of them, I should say. There weren't that many. There were two GameStops like in my area, and neither of them
Yeah.
had Battle for Bikini Bottom. And I always wanted to play that game when I was a kid. It was like this coveted treasure that I just couldn't play because I just couldn't find it anywhere. And
Did you ever get it?
I own it now.
Oh, okay, fair.
I didn't get it when I was a kid. I just it was always too far away or something. It was just never something I could get. But then
Did you?
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
You have a question?
Okay. Did you ever play that game SpongeBob SquarePants Lights Camera Pants?
Is that a PlayStation 2 game as well?
I think it was, and I think it might have also been on the GameCube.
I remember a similar sounding name SpongeBob game. This is a Star Wars Battlefront video, by the way.
We've already started with SpongeBob. It's fine.
We got the SpongeBob tangent.
Well, I mean, I bring up SpongeBob SquarePants Lights Camera Pants for a reason, because it was like it was like a party game. It was kind of like Mario Party with SpongeBob.
No, I have not played that one.
And they would have different mini games, and you would play split screen with you could do up to like 4 different people, but with the PS2, in order to have like 4 controllers, you had to get one of those adapter things.
Yeah, the big multi-tap thing.
Yeah, and I never had one as a kid because I never had more than 2 friends over or whatever.
Right, I remember that thing. I actually still have one in my closet. From what I remember, it plugs into both the controller port and the memory card port that is directly below. Or is it the other way around? The memory card port is above and the controller port is below. It plugs into both of them, and then it's like this big brick. I remember that thing.
Different time.
Back when you just had a bunch of shit attached to your game console to get it to do stuff. Like
you just had to fucking Voltron your PS2 to make it do things.
Yeah, even like the early part of the Xbox 360 generation, you had the hard drive of the original Xbox 360 was like the magazine of a P90 fucking SMG. It was like this thing that clipped onto the top of the Xbox, and it had. I bought the Xbox 360 Arcade, which did not come with a hard drive, but it came with like a 256 megabyte memory stick for a Xbox 360, which is kind of weird to think about. Yeah,
that is weird.
It's very weird. I don't have that memory card anymore, but yeah, holy shit. And those things also had in order to get wireless internet to work on the original model of the Xbox 360, you needed an actual little adapter that had a little thing on it, and you plugged that into the back. It was just a time where the console was what it was, and then to get additional functionality, you had all these other things you put on it. You don't really see that anymore.
Yeah, and it kind of ties into what you hear a lot of millennials talk about, of how tech when they were growing up was still kind of, you still had to learn it and understand how it worked because it wasn't always going to work.
Right.
People talk about MySpace. I never had a MySpace page, but I knew people who did because they were a little older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And MySpace, you had to you learn a little bit of HTML to play a song or some shit.
I had no idea that was how you did that, because I never. I never used it.
It was crazy. And then after that, with the advent of Apple and shit, the machines would just kind of work. And there's been these articles coming out recently of people saying that Gen Z and lower are the first generation that's less technically literate than the one before.
Yeah, it certainly makes sense.
Bizarre.
There's also a lack of a special feeling about playing a multiplayer game with your friends now, because this kind of ties into the whole point about all the shit you had to attach to your console to have more than 2 players or something like that. Like,
Right.
if you were having multiple friends over to play a game on like that console generation, you had to have all the necessary stuff, and it was never like, oh, I have 4 controllers or whatever. It's like, no, you bring your controller, you're bringing that shit over here, and or you're using the shitty one.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you had like the multi tap for your console to play with multiple people. Now, most of the time, if I was playing a game with someone, it was just one other person, so
Yeah. Same here. Yeah.
there wasn't a need for the multi tap too often, but it was there if it was ever needed. And Battlefront 2, the 2005 one, that was a game that I owned when I was a kid. I owned both of them, and uh, yeah, all the time friends would come over and we would play. Uh, the instant action and galactic conquest and stuff like that, and it
Yeah.
I think the couch co-op experience of actually having your friend come over to play a game is sorely missed. I mean, obviously, there's
Mm.
the convenience of being able to play with your friend when they don't live in the same area as you with multiplayer
Yeah.
games. But
With the same country.
exactly. But as far as the fact that it kind of phased out couch co-op altogether, it's a shame.
Yeah. We were we were thinking about this because when we were trying to set this game up to figure out how to play it, um, it was just like really like Byzantine to figure out how to like use a controller. And I just remember playing this game on PS2. Like everything was just already there. It was just that's the game you play, and you could actually do like split screen with the campaign and Galactic Conquest. And we figured out that you couldn't do that. And so the multiplayer kind of. I was just talking about you, talking to you about this the other day. I had a couple friends of mine in college that they would play Overwatch together, and they were a bunch of guys that lived together, so they could do this. And they would have 2 TVs set up in the same room, and they would play Overwatch like LAN, basically like a LAN party,
right?
And instead of, because you couldn't do split screen on Overwatch, you had to play on separate consoles.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of like atomization of culture and life is just it's part of why I have this kind of ennui about like the end of gaming, of like the gaming of my childhood and whatnot. Because like I remember I think it was a snow day when I was a kid. I think so. I was like in 4th grade, and a good friend of mine was staying. Like, we got like he came over, and we hadn't gotten the word that the school would be canceled yet, and we had heard about the 2-hour delay, and we were playing Battlefront basically the whole night. And so we finally get the word that that it's not just going to be a 2-hour delay; it's going to be a full cancel. So we continue to play Battlefront.
Hell yeah!
And so it was just like things like that were really cool. Just having like the game itself, like people talk about like go out and touch grass and shit, but like video games before the kind of like atomized online thing, they were kind of a social interaction, especially for like young boys, and that's like it's gone like Tears and Rain.
Yeah,
and it's like really depressing.
It's sad, but yeah, to kind of elaborate on how we even were playing Battlefront 2 now, a kind of a brief history of it. The PC release of that game was, it used I believe it used GameSpy, which was like a third party service that
I think I remember this.
GameSpy was what used to provide like online like dedicated server functionality, I think, for like online games on
Weren't they
PC.
also like an early kind of like Netflix like delivery service for like video games or some shit? Or am I
Oh,
thinking of something else?
I think you might be thinking of something else.
Huh.
But
GameFly, that's what I'm thinking of.
GameFly,
GameFly.
but Game
Yeah.
Spy, they shut down the multiplayer functionality of Battlefront 2 in like 2014, and
Yeah.
there was a several year period where there was no way to play the online functionality of Battlefront 2 anymore. But then that they brought that back in 2017 for the Steam version of Battlefront 2. So you
Right.
can play multiplayer. It's just very restrictive compared to what kind of co-op experience you had on the old games, or on the old
Yeah.
consoles rather. Back in the day on the PlayStation 2, you could play the campaign of the game in cooperative, split screen with a friend, and you could play the uh, Galactic Conquest mode co-op, or I don't know if that one was co-op or if you specifically played against the other player, uh,
I
which
remember playing it co-op, but it's been quite a few years.
Galactic
So.
Conquest was interesting because it was kind of like a board game style setup with the
Yeah.
overworld, and then when your ship arrives at a particular planet, kind of like a stop on a board game. Uh, if that planet was controlled by uh,
Kind
the
of like
other,
Risk or something like
yeah,
that.
I've never actually, you know what, I've never played Risk.
I, it's been a while since I played it, but I think it was kind
Yeah,
of risky.
probably. And then you engage in like a battle on that planet, or if they have like a fleet over the planet, you engage in a space battle beforehand.
Yeah.
And it was a very cool mode, but unfortunately, with the multiplayer setup we have now with the Steam version, um, since that's the only one that has online functionality, and believe
Yeah.
it or not, Cody and I are not in the same location or in the same country for that matter. uh,
Right.
uh, we were playing the Steam version, which only has multiplayer functionality for instant action, where you pick particular maps and game modes, and it just kind of cycles through those maps. Um,
Yeah.
and they released an update for the game a number of years ago that said they were adding controller support for the PC version, and that was, I think I should hand it over to Cody to explain how disastrous that was.
Yeah. Oh, when I was trying to figure out the controller.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. Um, I guess because it's like an older game or something. Because I always played this on PS2. In fact, I don't even think I understood what like online functionality was until like
no.
high school or middle school or
Holy
something.
shit.
Like I guess I could comprehend it,
Hmm.
but like I didn't know the PS2 had it because it did.
Yeah,
Um,
for very few games, I think.
yeah, I think Battlefront 2 was one of the few,
Yeah.
and I never used it because we always used it co-op and whatnot,
Hmm.
or not co-op, but like couch split screen kind of thing.
Right.
Um, it was in a whenever I'd have friends over, it was in kind of a rotation of different games we play. Another one we played was GoldenEye Rogue Agent, which I think was for the GameCube.
Okay.
I had a friend of mine that had that. It was like a sequel to GoldenEye, I think, and you could play as like the dude with the bowl cap and like chop people's heads off with that. It was cool.
Odd
Anyway,
job. Odd job.
yeah, yeah, that was it. I don't really watch James Bond movies, so I don't really
Uh,
know anything about it.
Literally,
um,
the only reason I knew his name was Odd Job was because in Austin Powers, there's a parody of him called Random Task. Yeah, it's a very dumb joke.
it's incredible.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of
Random
sad.
task.
It's kind of sad that my only frame of reference for like a classic Bond like henchman character from like one of the greatest franchises of like spy films
Yeah.
is Austin Powers. Uh, yeah.
Um,
To kind of iterate off of your point there, though, it is interesting when like you have this console and this set of games in your library, and your friend has a different console with a completely different set of games. And there
yeah,
was like, depending on whether you were going over to their house or they were coming over to your house, would then determine what experience you were going to have. Um, and I had a similar situation where I had a friend that had the original Xbox, and he had both Halo 1 and 2,
mm,
and he got Halo 2 for his birthday. He was like 2 or 3 years older than me. And he got Halo 2 for his birthday, and I'm pretty sure it was the year that Halo 2 like came out. So like 2004. So I was like 6 years old playing Halo 2, which is an M-rated game with lots of blood. Well, lots of blood for the time. Not really a lot of blood
yeah,
now, but a lot of blood for the time. And I kind of became obsessed with both Star Wars and Halo during my early childhood. I
yeah.
used to draw Master Chief all the time, and
I used to draw
and
Danny Phantom all the time.
I actually
I
did. I actually used to bring. This is silly. I used to bring video game instruction manuals with me to school, and I would like draw the art that was on the front of the manual.
oh yeah,
I
yeah.
would
I
like,
think I knew a few kids that did that.
yeah, I would do that back in the day.
Yeah,
And
back when instruction manuals were a thing.
yeah,
You remember instruction manuals?
yeah,
Like,
I remember when instruction manuals became. There was like a brief period where they would give you like a little. It was almost like a pamphlet that gave you a link on the inside to tell you where the fuck to get the information from, and I was like, that's lame. Uh,
yeah.
and now it's literally like a sheet of paper, and it's
Or if you get like a Switch game, it's just like they have that really weird rectangular box. You open it up, there's nothing in it but this little tiny little thing for the game card, and it's just like, well, this is sad and
yeah,
dumb.
yeah,
Because like when you got like a new game as a kid and you'd like drive home from GameStop or some shit, you would like like read the back of the box and like frantically rip it open and like read the instruction manual to get like the lore and shit.
yeah.
Uh,
That's exactly what I used to do. That just doesn't happen anymore, because now
no,
what you
no,
end up doing now is you buy the game on a digital storefront, and then you download it,
yeah,
and you probably like, I don't know. I just picture like a 12-year-old like checking his like Twitter account or something while he waits for
yeah,
the game to download. The idea of a 12-year-old on Twitter is just horrifying.
yeah.
But I actually,
Ontologically evil, even
yeah,
just
I actually just bought Like a Dragon Ishin the other day, or a couple weeks ago. I'm going to open the case right now and see what the piece of paper has in it instead of an instruction manual.
we got instruction manual ASMR here, fellas.
Yeah, okay. Oh, opened it up. Oh, you know what? It doesn't have an instruction manual. It has a sticker, which is, you know what? That's cool. And the other thing it has is a download code for a pre-order bonus.
Ugh,
Yeah, that's it.
God has forsaken us.
Oh, hold on. There's text written on the inside of the paper.
Oh, text.
There's text written. The sacred text is written on the inside of the paper sleeve for the game.
The sacred Jedi text.
It says, "See important health and safety warnings in the PlayStation 4 settings menu. Software subject to license and limited warranty." Well, that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when games had instruction manuals, because let me actually put this shit back in here before I keep talking with a bunch of sound in the background.
Oh, it's fun. It'll sound cool.
The tactile nature of a physical copy of a video game.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. Let me do a little ASMR here real quick. There we go.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, no, the Halo games are a good example of that, actually, because the first two games, or at least Halo 2 did, when you would read the instruction manual, it gave you a bit of like background lore, but it also had an entry about every single enemy type along with a picture and like a description of them and all the weapons as well. So you could like read up on lore about the different weapons and shit in the instruction manual, which is just stuff you don't see anymore included with like a basic copy of a game.
Yeah.
That sort of info is now reserved for like an art book special edition of the game that that costs
Or
an extra $30.
Wikipedia.
Or Wikipedia, yeah. The fandom wiki will tell me all I need to know now.
Yeah. And you just like you pull up your like fucking Steam or GOG library, and you just have this list of games, and it's like you know that they can take away the license to this at any time.
Oh yeah,
And you probably spent $300 on it.
Oh, I've spent a lot more than $300 on Steam. It's the tragedy. The tragedy of PC gaming is that you no longer own a license. You don't own the game. You own a license to play the game on the account that you've been given with Steam.
Yeah.
So if I were to someday do something that Steam decides is objectionable and worthy of being banned, or if they update their services or values change to the point where doing, pretty much anything could get you banned, I would lose access to everything that I have on Steam, which I don't particularly worry about because I just literally use Steam to play games. I don't do anything on there other than play games, but yeah, it's sad because that switch as well is something you can pretty easily document, like something like the PC version of Oblivion, The Elder Scrolls 4. That game was you bought the disc. Remember when you bought a disc for a PC game?
I never did.
You
I always was a console guy.
Yeah, I was a console guy until like 2012, I think, was when I got a laptop and started playing on PC. But as far as like what used to happen was you bought the game and then you owned the game. And even with PC games, you would buy the game and then you had the disc, and I remember you were required to have the disc in your computer unless you used a particular code that came with it. But I used to let my friends borrow like the disc for certain games that I had on PC, and they would just need to, as long as they had the disc, they could play the game. But then Skyrim came out, and the PC version of Skyrim was that's the next game after Oblivion. Skyrim was a Steam download key. There was no way to purchase like a physical...
Yeah, they don't even make discs for laptops anymore, don't they?
No, I don't think
like
so.
Computers or shit. Like every single laptop I've owned, I think, has not had a DVD player.
Yeah, no, my PC that I built does not even have a spot on it for a disc tray to like play movies on it, or download stuff from a CD or DVD or whatever.
I've thought about picking up like basically circling back to the PS2 brick thing of picking up one of those like add-ons you can like back up your physical media collection, because I've become a physical media guy in recent years because everything is just like disappearing, and video games especially. I'm not really collecting those, but like you go to like Disc Replay and you'll see like Silent Hill 2 or some shit on PS2, and it's like $300. And
the collector's market, especially with the last few years of COVID, you can check like the price indexes online for these sort of things, and pricing for particularly rare video games has gone way up, and I can only assume it's because of like people that got stimulus money just being like, fuck it, I'm buying Silent Hill 2 or whatever. And
finally biting bullet.
Yeah, exactly. And things have just kind of gone up in that highly specific collector's market. I've also been like a physical media guy. I kind of regret that I sold my Xbox 360 collection years and years ago, because I owned I owned a disgusting amount of games.
The amount of games I have sold over the years makes me want to end it all.
Dude, I sold I sold my Game Boy Advance SP that I got when I was a child, and then
I think I lost mine.
I got like $30 for it, and it's like, man, I wish I had that back. That had my initials on it. Like my initials were carved into the plastic of the back of that thing.
Yeah, like I would, before you're like old and understand that like $50 for a Pokemon game is not that much. But like when you're like 14, like $50 is like 5 pizzas, which it's now 3 pizzas. But
3 pizzas you need to reheat in the oven at your own home because they don't fucking cook them properly.
All right, I want to do the Pizza Hut rant right now.
Do the Pizza Hut? Okay, yeah, do it.
So
I've heard this. I've heard this from him like 4 times now.
And I'm gonna make it like permanent. It's gonna go out into the world right now. So when I was a kid, Pizza Hut, and I really associate Pizza Hut with like video games for some reason.
I'm flashing Pizza Rant on the screen right now in red text. By the way, I'm going to be doing that.
And yeah, fantastic. And so like it's like the PS2 sign and the Pepsi logo and the Pizza Hut logo go together in my mind, and like the kind of book it read thing that you did as a kid where you'd like read like a Magic Treehouse fucking book and give it to your teacher, and they'd like you'd read like 30 books or something and get like points for it and get like a free pizza at the end of the year. I don't know where that came from. That's not the Pizza Rant. Here's the Pizza Rant. When I was a kid, Pizza Hut was a sit-down location that you would go in, and generally you'd have the buffet or you just order a pizza. And when you got the pizza, it was cooked, you know? And like the cheese was melted and like maybe a little brown even. Now, when you go to a fucking Pizza Hut, it's like this like fucking communist like door frame or whatever. Door frame, I don't know. Like like a fucking bread line that you just like walk in and you just like place your order because like there's no place to sit down because no one wants to sit down anymore because no one likes people.
Yeah, and you gotta wait for the babushka in front of you to get her ration of Pizza Hut.
Yeah, and the other thing, the most evil thing that Pizza Hut did was they got rid of like the old like stone fire pizza ovens that you'd use to like cook a pizza. And they gave these like new like fucking neoliberal like conveyor belt pizza things to cook a fucking pizza. And what happens is like it's a standardized like cooking method, and the problem with standardized cooking method is every pizza is different, right? And so when you cook a pizza through this method, maybe it cooks, but maybe it doesn't. And for like the past like 10 times I've gotten Pizza Hut, and I don't get it very often anymore, like 5 out of those 10 times, the pizza's been undercooked. The cheese is like, have you ever had fucking unmelted cheese on a pizza? It's disgusting. It's awful. And so there are people that will like get like their pizza like well done or some shit, like it's a fucking beef steak shit. Like, oh my god, like can't like how have we so regressed as a culture that our fucking pizza is not cooked from Pizza Hut? So like what happened was I was like, there's no way this is the fix to the problem. I take a couple of the pieces of pizza from like the leftover Pizza Hut, put it in my fucking oven, and I cook the fucking pizza. And like fucking Gorbachev cook this fucking pizza. Like,
did you say cook this pizza?
Yeah,
like you're Italian.
Cooking the pizza.
Yeah.
And so it's cooked, and like you can eat it, and it tastes kind of like Pizza Hut when I was a kid. And this is just the general feeling of just devastation I have to like all of society, like especially post COVID, but really post lockdown, because that was the problem. And it just causes me immense anger. And I mean I trace the end of Western civilization back to many things, but there's the neoliberal conveyor belt pizza oven,
and
then there's
window.
the communist window, and the end of the McDonald's snack wrap.
Okay.
So that's the Pizza Rant. I got it out of the way.
And
It's
the end
it's
of
going.
the end of Split Screen as well. The end of Split Screen.
Oh, and the end of Split Screen, and yeah, not even like Brian De Palma Split Screen. I like just playing fucking Battlefront from Pandemic. Which when did Pandemic close down? Was that like 2008?
Yeah, now we're not talking about Pandemic as in the COVID pandemic. We're talking about Pandemic Studios,
Right, yeah.
the company.
I just switched.
We're going all over the place now. Pandemic Studios was the company that made Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, as well as some other really good games like Destroy All Humans 1 and 2, where you play as like an alien guy in like a sort of like 50s setting kind of thing. Very cartoony. And they shut down in 2009, November 2009.
Oh, yep. That was a big year for shutdowns.
That is like the death of the author right there. Let me tell you, I'm using that completely wrong, and I don't give a shit.
I think the last game they released was the Lord of the Rings Conquest game, right? That was it.
No. I think it and a game called The Saboteur both came out in 2009, and they were
Saboteur. I vaguely remember that.
Yeah, it's kind of like a game where you play as like a French resistance fighter in Nazi-occupied France.
Hell yeah!
I never played it. It looked really.
Wasn't it one of those like early PS2, PS3 games?
Yes, it was
Okay.
well, early PS3 in the sense that 2009 was like a couple years into that console generation, but yeah, like middle of that generation kind of thing.
There was like a whole series of like kind of like schlocky like B picture versions of like PS3 games, and like I remember the Saboteur being like one of those. Like it was like I think it was like a first person shooter or some shit, and it had like a co-op campaign. Or am I thinking of something different?
I have no idea.
I think I'm thinking of Army of One or whatever. Anyway, Lord of the Rings Conquest was the.
Are you thinking of Army of Two?
Maybe
Army of Two was like a third person action game where the entire premise was that you were playing with your friend as the other character. But if you were playing single player, the other character was just an AI. But it was kind of based around co-op, and you both wore like these metal masks.
Yeah.
That game was pretty fun. Although it was quite schlocky.
I never played it. So
Simon and I, bringing up Simon on the podcast now. He and
Don't explain it.
I'm not explaining it. There's too much. I had one time told him about this game, and there's a villain in the first game that calls your character Fucko at one point. Like he calls him
Hell
Fucko,
yeah.
and like the main character's like Fucko. Like who says that? Like that's so weird. And Simon and I often use that word Fucko, and
Oh, is that where you got that?
it's where I got it. I have no clue if that's where he got it. But I brought Simon into this with unconfirmed reports of him being influenced by that, and I don't think he was.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think he's gonna watch this, but if he does, hey Simon,
you're on air.
Yeah, you're on air. Pandemic shutting down. That's
Pandemic shutting down. The last like big release I remember was Lord of the Rings Conquest, and I never owned this game, but I did play it, and I have a very specific memory with it.
Okay,
and it is I remember going to Target, and they had a PS3 setup. Like you remember how they would set up like a game system?
Yeah,
you could like play whatever game was on there.
Yeah, it was entombed in like plastic.
Yeah.
And it had the most disgusting controller known to man.
Yes.
With like 60 layers of someone's hand.
And before like the advent of like HD TVs, they would have it on like a CRT that's like high up, and you have to like crane your neck.
Yeah.
And like playing like a GameCube game or some shit.
This is literally like mid-2000s nostalgia, the episode. This isn't even about Battlefront 2 anymore.
Yeah, Battlefront 2 is just I don't know. Whatever. So Lord of the Rings Conquest, this was like after the advent of HDTV, so they had like an HDTV, and you didn't have to crane your neck, so you could like see it. And Lord of the Rings Conquest is like the last game I remember playing in that mode of like just like a demo basically on there.
Yeah.
And that was my only experience with it. I remember it being kind of cool, but I never bought it.
Yeah, I actually did own that game, and it was one of those games that I did play couch co-op with my friend. And I actually also have an interesting story with that game. It's probably only funny to me because I witnessed it happen. So I don't even know if explaining the story would be particularly funny, but essentially we were playing Lord of the Rings Conquest, and it's basically Star Wars Battlefront. You know, it's like a two teams fighting against each other to capture command points on the map or just wipe out the enemy team kind of thing. And but it's got a Lord of the Rings skin on it, and
it was a cool concept.
It was very cool. It had like the heroes versus villains mode, because you know, the entire thing with the Lord of the Rings is like the cast of characters that it had, so you could kind of play as all these interesting characters, both good and bad. And there was a point where we were playing on the Shire map, because the game actually has a battle in the Shire where the movie does not. And I was playing as Sauron, like the big fucking bad, the big bad of Lord of the Rings, Sauron, and my friend was playing as whatever the hero counterpart to Sauron was on that map. And I'm like walking over the bridge in the Shire, and I said the words Battle of the Century. And then as I said Battle of the Century, that the Lord of the Rings game had these big eagles that fly around on the map and occasionally would pick up enemies, and it would like show you fly off and you would die. As soon as I said Battle of the Century, an eagle flew down, grabbed Sauron, the most powerful evil motherfucker ever, picked him up, and then I died. And for like
incredible,
literally, like if I were to message my friend right now and just say Battle of the Century, he would know exactly what I meant. And this shit happened in like 2010. So
that reminds me of like playing Battlefront 2 with friends, and we'd like go on to heroes versus villains and just fuck around.
Yeah.
Like you'd play as Han Solo, get him down to half health, and then you just like go to the highest place you can, set a jetpack, and just run into it and detonate it to see how far you can fly.
back when games were just about fucking around with your friends. Yeah. Like that. I know you haven't really played the Halo games, but that was a thing they did really well, because like Halo 2 came out in like 2004, but it had like a pretty good physics system for all like the enemy ragdolls and stuff. And you would literally, I would go over to my friend's house and we would just like throw grenades at vehicles and watch them fly through the air and like try and hit the other person on the other side of the map with like a well-placed like vehicle launch. It was insane. And
yeah,
the insanity of that kind of this kind of is the cross section of the internet era of multiplayer and the couch co-op era, because Halo 3 had a thing called file share, and it had a game mode called Forge, and with Forge you could build your own maps out of assets and stuff, and you could also create game modes within Forge, and the file share system allowed you to upload game modes and game maps to like an online cloud kind of thing. And then other players, if they... I think if they knew what your profile was, they could go to your profile and see your files you had shared and then save them to their Xbox. And play those game modes offline or online with their friends. And... it was to the point where, like, Halo is a game where you shoot each other until a team wins, basically. But you would see people make game modes like Jenga, where they would build a tower out of, like, those concrete... They would build a tower, like, several towers out of these, like, concrete... like, those big concrete barriers. And they were stacked like a Jenga tower, and it was just, like, hovering over an abyss. And one player would be standing on top of the towers... and another player would be launching vehicles and exploding barrels and shit at the towers using like these gravity lifts. And it's like that kind of shit you just don't really see that much anymore in games, where like you've just given the player entire freedom to do whatever the hell they want. And
Yeah.
you would get like the weirdest shit ever. Like there was a game mode in Halo 3 that was just called Fat Kid, and it was like I'm pretty sure the entire thing was like one player moved really slow but like could insta kill enemies or something, and the other players just had to run away from them or something. It was so fucking weird. It was an insane era that you just don't see anymore. Like if you named a game mode Fat Kid now, like it would get taken off just because people are so lame. People are so lame now.
Yeah.
It just sucks.
Life sucks. And kind of circle back to Battlefront 2 a little bit so we can actually cover the game we were going to talk about.
Yeah.
Battlefront 2 came out, of course, in 2005, and a thing that like the modern Star Wars fan that maybe didn't grow up with Battlefront 2, the thing with it is this is pre-Clone Wars. This is pre that Cartoon Network and then Disney Plus series, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which was the last thing George Lucas was involved in before he sold Lucasfilm. So there are like aspects of like the Battlefront campaign, which is really cool, that are bizarre if you're going off of like the modern like established lore. Like the whole campaign is narrated by the Tamara Morrison clone trooper, and I think they actually got him to voice
they definitely
the
did,
narrator. Yeah. And so this would have come out the same year as Revenge of the Sith, and so he does this kind of like classic war drama, kind of noir-ish like monologue throughout it, talking about like the end of the 501st and then how they teamed up with Vader. And a big plot point, and we were talking about this, a big plot point they added in the Clone Wars that was not there before, a retcon, was the microchip thing.
The inhibitor chip, yeah.
The inhibitor chip, yeah.
Yeah.
But before that, Battlefront 2 operated under the assumption that that did not exist because no one thought of that. And so the clones just basically killed all the Jedi.
Yeah, of their own free will. Like they knew what their mission was, and they knew that that they were created to kill the Jedi. They just concealed it very well. Until it was too late.
It made it much clearer how complicit the clones were. Even I do think that in the prequels they sort of touch on how the clones are manufactured to be more obedient, but there's never a specificity as to what that is.
Yeah, there's no mention of like a chip that controls their mind. It literally just, I think that they briefly say that they kind of breed, they engineered out the certain traits of Jango Fett's genetics to kind of make them more obedient.
Yeah, and the way it's presented is more in the kind of like I guess Hitler Youth, like brainwashing, like start with the children kind of thing, more than like a physical inhibitor chip.
Yeah.
So I think it makes the Battlefront 2 story a bit more compelling. I think
it is
and
very compelling. Yeah.
A bit more disturbing as well.
Yeah, I think the problem was that the Clone Wars show really humanizes the clones in a way that wasn't done before. I mean, you've got like the third movie has like a couple moments. There's like a character named Oddball or whatever that like talks to Anakin when they're in their ship, or it's like, there's Commander Cody, and stuff like that. But then like the show kind of humanizes them, and it's like, well, how the hell do you humanize these guys? And then you know that they're going to just turn around and murder the Jedi, and it's like, well, we'll rewrite it so that it was not done of their own free will. They were just pawns, and either way, they were just pawns in the scheme of that movie. But
it doesn't change it much, but it's enough.
Yeah, it changes it in such a way that the narration becomes very sinister in Battlefront 2. Where
and you can tell the Tamara Morrison character, the narrator, he doesn't like what happened, And
Yeah.
it's a really interesting kind of like war piece of Star Wars lore that's no longer canon technically.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what he says, but there's a piece of narration probably halfway through the campaign when it switches from Clone Wars to Empire. I think it's the one where the 501st Battalion attacks the Jedi Temple, and Tamura Morrison, the narrating it as a clone trooper, he kind of says like, we were all silent on the flight there, something like we knew what we were going there to do, basically. It's very disturbing, like kind of a glimpse into the mind of a murderer in a sense. Very, very cool. It's very much like a kind of like the diary of a soldier kind of thing, like the way that it's written. Like he's describing this years afterward.
It was a really cool piece, and I'm almost sad that Star Wars went the direction of the inhibitor chip.
I'm sad that Star Wars has gone in the direction it's gone in its entirety.
Well,
right
yeah, but that's I think the inhibitor chip was even before the Disney buy.
It was, yeah. The thing about you kind of compared it to the Hitler Youth. Not to turn this into a Rick Worley video or anything, but no, I love Rick Worley. Just to be clear, he
great YouTuber. Check out Rick Worley.
Yeah, check out Rick Worley's videos on Star Wars and stuff, and other things. But in his he talks about how George Lucas quotes a lot of other movies throughout history, and he does it a lot. And the final shots of Attack of the Clones, where it shows the clone army, and it's playing the Imperial March, which is, music associated with evil in Star Wars, yet the movie ends on this sort of false positive, where it's like, I guess the first movie ends on a false positive. The second one, it's like a build-up to war kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the clones have the visual element of the stormtroopers, which have always been associated with evil, playing the evil music, yet they're supposed to be represented as allies of the Jedi. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
At the time, you were probably thinking, like, what the hell is going to happen, right? Unless you were one of those people that was like, fuck the Star Wars prequels, I hate these goddamn movies, or whatever. But he shoots the clones in that sequence very much reminiscent of, like, Nazi propaganda movies, how they would portray the Nazi army. It's a very
like
deliberate
Lenny
choice.
Riefenstahl kind of shit.
If you like kind of compare shots from like Nazi propaganda films to those sort of sequences of all the clones, it's very similar and very creepy.
I think it's one of the kind of the best one of the best like John Williams flourishes in that like ending sequence in Attack of the Clones, where I can't remember what I think it's like Yoda says, "Begun the Clone War has," and you just see the looks on like Bail Organa and everyone's faces, except Palpatine, who just kind of has that stoic Palpatine look.
Mm-hmm.
He's not quite showing all of his hand yet. And they all just look horrified at what's in front of them and what they're about to just be complicit in.
Right.
And then it starts Imperial March, and then it does the really cool switch from Imperial March to like the Across the Stars or whatever that theme is, and cross-cutting over to Anakin and Padme getting married.
Yeah. That is a very good
it's
musical.
It's a cool musical cue. Yeah. Another bit of like kind of the sad end of the EU thing, and we might, I don't know if we'll do a full episode on The Force Unleashed, but I did want to touch on it a bit here. I never played the PS3 version. I only played the PS2 version. But I remember when this game came out, it was like a big, like, game came out in 2008. So this was like the first time I like kept up with like the development cycle of a game, and kind of comprehended what that meant, because they would release these like really cool like physics videos or whatever of how like the Force was going to work, and it was just a bunch of marketing that I bought hook, line, and sinker because I was like 10.
Right.
And it was I remember it being really cool. I was really this was like the peak Star Wars obsession for me. It was about 2008, 2009. The game came out and I played it on PS2 and really liked it, but I never did get a chance to play the PS3 version, so I might have to go and do that because I've seen gameplay of it and I was like, oh, that looks even cooler. And it was about like Darth Vader's secret apprentice. Again, this is pre-Clone. Well, no, it's not pre-Clone Wars. It's the same time as Clone Wars.
Right.
So you had two different versions of Star Wars happening, where Anakin had Ahsoka as an apprentice in Clone Wars, and then Vader had Galen Marek, or the Star Killer, as an apprentice in The Force Unleashed. And they both use like the backhand assassin style way of holding the lightsaber.
I never actually made that connection between the characters.
That
they're both like apprentices to Anakin. Anakin as Anakin and Anakin as Vader, and they both have that backhanded sort of way of holding the lightsaber. That's cool.
Yeah. It was an interesting. I don't know if that was on purpose or
the duality of man moment right there.
Yeah. And ultimately, neither one of them were particularly canon with each other.
No,
because like Ahsoka was, but Starkiller wasn't. Which made sense because if you play the game, Starkiller is like a beast and psychotic and like stronger than Anakin.
The most overpowered character in Star Wars because he literally pulls like. There's a sequence in that game where he pulls a Star Destroyer, which is like a massive fucking ship. He pulls it out of the atmosphere down to the planet, which is like nothing had ever been done like that in Star Wars before, which is kind of crazy. That's like that game was like near the end of that era of Star Wars games when LucasArts was just killing it.
Yeah, and they would just like Lucas was big in allowing like different interpretations of Star Wars, and didn't like whatever Star Wars was the movies he made, but anything else anyone wanted to do, he would basically sign off on it. Right. Wouldn't necessarily be like quote unquote canon, but he never like I liked the era where it was like it was never confirmed nor denied what was canon, what wasn't. It was just kind of multiple choice.
Right. I mean, back then I don't think I had a conception of canon. It was just like, I'm playing a Star Wars game.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's just because I was a kid, but...
Same, yeah.
Like, from like 1999 to like 2009, I would say, was like just this golden era. This is the golden decade of Star Wars games under George Lucas. And I guess even a bit after that, because there were games that they were working on that got canceled when Disney bought... the Star Wars license from George Lucas.
Oh yeah, like 1313 or something.
Yeah, 1313, Star Wars 1313. Yeah, like, that was a canceled project that everyone was looking forward to.
Near
the
one
end,
of those like great big gaming like woes. Like it's like 1313 and Final Fantasy Versus 13, which are like the biggest like gaming tragedies of my childhood.
Yeah, but if you like look on Star Wars 1313 was the last thing that LucasArts games has on their list of LucasArts games, like Wikipedia, and it just 2013 canceled.
Yeah,
very sad. But yeah, no, there were a ton of Star Wars games back then. An obscene.
And Star Wars was doing like weird shit. Like around the time that Force Unleashed came out, they also had Starkiller, Vader, and Yoda show up in different versions of Soul Calibur 4.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember
they were all over the fucking place back then. They had other weird games too, like when the Phantom Menace released. I think it was May of 1999. Was when the Phantom Menace released.
I was 2. I didn't go see it.
I did not go and see it either. I was 1. But no, when the Phantom Menace first came out, there were like 2 games released on the same day, May 18th of 1999. I don't know if that's the day that the movie came out or like the same week or whatever. But there was another game called Star Wars Episode 1, The Gungan Frontier. And I'm pretty sure JonTron talked about that in a video he did, where like the whole premise of the game is that what's his name? Boss Nass, the fucking the big fat Gungan guy. He yeah, exactly, that guy. He's like talking to the player, and he's just like,
You be needing to know bombard many things to make we a new home on the moon.
and it's like, what the fuck? And it's like this game where you plant trees and like wildlife on the moon of Naboo. And
it's
and
like a life simulator,
yeah,
tycoon thing.
Are you like
whatever.
terraforming the moon to make a Gungan home? Like, I have no clue what the hell, like and that kind of stuff that they were working.
There
on.
was
Just
like a
weird
Jurassic
games.
Park game that worked like that. That was really cool.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Built your own Jurassic Park. It was on PS2. It was a really cool game.
Yeah, but I guess to kind of compare the kind of things they were doing back then, because not all the games they made were good, but it didn't really matter because they made a lot of good ones.
It was the time of like licensed video games and tie-in video games, like the really cool King Kong tie-in video game I've been thinking about lately.
The cool thing about LucasArts is that there were a lot of Star Wars games, but it wasn't as if Lucas was just handing out the license to anybody. It was like LucasArts itself was somewhat involved with the process as well, even if they weren't the developer of the game. So there was still somewhat of a control there, but they were pretty laissez-faire about it, honestly, because you've got like pretty faithful games like Star Wars Pod Racer, where like it's just a pod racing game about the Phantom Menace.
There were two of them. There was Episode 1 Racer, and there's the one that I played on PS2 called Racer Revenge.
Which
was one of my favorite games growing up.
It
was so cool.
And then you
could like ram into the other pods and get them out. It was good time.
There's other stuff like Star Wars Super Bombad Racing, which is like, if you've ever seen the cover for Super Bombad Racing, I might put a picture of it up right now if anyone's actually watching the video of this and they're not just listening. It's like Funko Pops racing each other in like little vehicles.
It was like a kart racer, kind of Mario Kart kind of knockoff.
Very strange. But you look at all these sort of games of all different kinds of genres of Star Wars games that were all coming out. Like, it's actually kind of crazy how many just per year were made that are Star Wars related. And then you compare it to the current era of Star Wars games, and it's like, I understand games look a lot more realistic now, and the development time is probably a lot longer and a lot more expensive, but it's like Disney bought the license, and I think they signed some sort of like exclusivity deal with EA. So EA was the only company that was able to make Star Wars games for a good half a decade. And in that half a decade, I think you can count the number of Star Wars games on one hand.
So there was the first Battlefront remake, which I was vaguely excited for because I wanted to play Battlefront again. And then we got it. One, there was no campaign. And two, it was bad. And that was it. I did play it a bit. I remember I was working at Dairy Queen at the time, and I played with a coworker there or something, and it was okay. And then Battlefront 2 came out, and this was the remake. And was there a campaign at that point, or did it come out? It had a weird launch.
It had a very, very weird launch. It did have the campaign when it first came out, so the campaign was included. But the thing is that I'm pretty sure when that game came out, there was no Clone Wars related content, to my understanding. I think it was all original trilogy and sequel trilogy stuff, and then they had to add in the Clone Wars stuff later.
Yeah,
I might be wrong there.
That sounds right.
But the bigger controversy when that game first came out was actually the loot box system that it used, because all of your progress and all the ways that you could make your character better or like make your weapons better was entirely reliant on the loot box system that was so popular back then, where you just paid real money to get like a random box of different things for your character, and it just sucked. Like, people got so upset, and it's such a corporate idea for a video game to have like loot
Yeah.
boxes and shit. Eventually they relented on that and they took it out of the game. And we've actually played that Battlefront 2 quite a few times.
And
as, like,
it's
a
pretty
multiplayer
fun.
experience.
I mean, it's not bad.
It's not a bad game. The story kind of is disappointing because instead of being like I guess in a sense it is connecting the original trilogy to the sequel trilogy story, while the old Battlefront 2 connects the prequel trilogy to the original trilogy, which
Yeah.
I can kind of see that making sense, because you're making a game that is for a new audience of Star Wars fans,
Yeah.
aka a new generation of children, because
Right. Of course.
it is indeed a game for children. Make no mistake. Not that that's a bad thing. I don't particularly care. If it's fun, it's fun.
Yeah, it was kind of a disappointing experience, as a lot of video games have been lately. But EA did somewhat redeem themselves with I think it was the next game they put out, basically the next Star Wars game. We'll probably end up doing an episode on it, but it's Jedi Fallen Order, and the sequel's coming out this year, I think. Jedi Survivor.
Yeah, that comes out in April. So who knows? Maybe when that comes out, and it's been out for a bit, maybe we'll do an episode on it, on the duology of.
Yeah, I'll have to get a PS5, but yeah.
Yeah. Luckily for me, that comes out on PC, and I have a decent enough setup that I could play it. So.
Yeah, I'm still holding on to
the console thing.
The console thing. So
yeah,
at some point I'll get a PS5 and play it on there.
I would say that the Fallen Order was a very well made game.
That was so good, fun. Man.
It combines like what you want a lightsaber combat system to be, with kind of like it's a mix of that with a few elements from Sekiro, if you've ever played Sekiro. I know, Cody, you haven't yet, but
not yet.
It's very much a system of parries. You kind of you perfectly time your deflection of an enemy's incoming attack to.
It's like baby's first Soulsborne.
Kind of. It's most of the Souls games are kind of dodge based, while Sekiro is very much like a parry based system. So I can see a lot of inspiration for that. Even in that, both of them have like sort of.
They both came out the same year.
Oh, so, really?
Yeah,
actually, I had no idea.
2019.
It's probably, maybe then it's not an inspiration from Sekiro, and maybe they both just kind of.
Yeah, I think it was just in the air.
Yeah, I think most of them probably. I guess Sekiro kind of iterated off of what they were doing with Dark Souls, and maybe Star Wars Fallen Order probably just was thinking the same kind of thing. How you would do a good modern lightsaber combat system with like a lock-on camera, third-person sort of deal.
Yeah.
It just kind of naturally follows, I suppose. But yeah.
The kind of like 3D Metroidvania kind of thing.
Yeah. Very, very good game. Highly recommend it. And
we might end up doing an episode on it, just because it. That was like the last like new game besides like Kingdom Hearts 3 or something, that I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. And it was not something I was expecting. I remember I still have the capacity to get very angry at video games, is what I figured out playing that game. When I was on Dathomir, I think, the first time.
Oh Jesus, yeah, that's hellish. Those I forget what they were called. Like, they're like these big creatures, and when they die, they take like one last swing at you.
Yeah,
in their death, their death animation is one last final attack, And that
And
is some
it can kill
Soulsborne
you.
bullshit. That is some Soulsborne bullshit for an enemy's last attack to be a final fuck you.
and it can kill you, and then you
Oh.
have to restart.
Right, because when you die in that game, much like a Souls game, it puts you at the last area you meditated at, and all the enemies have respawned. So you've defeated it, but you died, so it's back. Just
And-
hellish.
Yeah, but overall, very good game. It was really cool.
Yeah,
Um,
it had charm to it that a lot of modern Star Wars things just don't have.
Yeah,
Which is also very sad. The death of Star Wars coincides with the downfall of civilization, Pizza Hut, all that jazz. It all happened at once.
The real Pizzagate is Pizza Hut getting conveyor belt ovens.
Yeah,
Hot take.
yeah. I guess kind of to go way back to something we were talking about way earlier in the episode. I too am becoming a physical media buff, as it were.
Yeah.
An avid media buff, you might say. And yeah, I own. This is very much like an old man thing to be like, oh yeah, I collect for the console, or I collect for the thing that I had when I was a kid, you know.
Yeah.
But I have like over 150 PlayStation 2 games, and that's like the only thing I collect for is just PlayStation 2, because
Right.
the when I started doing that, most PlayStation 2 games can be found for like $5, $5 to $10. And
Yeah.
there was like a store near where I live where they had like a deal where it was like if you buy 5 games, you get 20% off. So literally it was just like, oh, so I can just go in there with you know, I want 5, if I want like 4 PS2 games that are between $5 and $10, I can essentially just get the 5th one free, really. And
Right.
it was quite the time. I accumulated a lot of interesting games doing that for over like the course of like 2 or 3 years. And
Yeah.
It's very sad to see that physical media is kind of dying as far as like games and movies go. There's not really an interest in that sort of stuff anymore. It's all streaming, or even with games, you have things like Xbox Live Gold or Game
Yeah.
Pass, where
Right.
you just have access to like 150 games, which is a very convenient service. But
Yeah, Nintendo switched to something similar too, with like NES and SNES games, which is it's kind of cool, I guess. But...
yeah, it's unfortunate that at the end of the day, you've spent all the money on it and then you don't actually have anything afterward. You just kind of, the service has ended. You don't have the game anymore.
You will own nothing and you will be happy.
Yeah, there was even a point where I think if you bought the PC version of Fallout 76, which was a disaster in many fronts as well, the PC version of that game did not come with a disc. It came with a case, but in the case was where the disc would be was a cardboard disc with a code on it that gave you the download for the game. So you didn't even get a physical copy of the game when you bought a physical copy of the game. You got a cardboard circle.
Yeah.
If that cardboard circle is not an analogy for Pizza Hut's modern pizza, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
I think that's where we should. That's a beautiful metaphor to end the episode on.
Yeah. I guess this has been Sense of Life, and
Oh damn,
we'll be back.
We're actually
Unless you got something else.
No, I got nothing else.